Good evening and welcome to this session of the West Midlands CPD. West Midlands put on CPD events every 2 weeks, and we try and vary the topics between technical issues and the more vocational ones as of this evening's session. If you have any ideas for sessions that you wish to see or even run, please drop myself or any of the committee members a line and we'll do our best to accommodate them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers for tonight on the subject of CIBSE Training and Development. Mike and Simon are fellows within the West Midlands region and both sit on the CIBSE Training and Development Panel, and at the same time manage their own companies and departments. They are both advocates for development of young engineers. So with that, Simon and Mike, over to you. Thank you very much. And any questions, you have to put them in the chat box, and then we'll pick them up as we come to them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. For those that have taken the time to join us this evening, myself, Simon Steed. I have been with CIBSE for a number of years. I am currently leading a team and a group within the Birmingham area. Mike?
I'm Mike Powers, so I'm a consulting engineer, and I'm part of the West Midlands network, and I lead a business in the Midlands as well.
So what we thought we would just run through a few things for everybody this evening. For some of you that may be interested, not just on the training and development, but also really how Mike and I went from young engineers to fellows within the industry. And you'll see from the narrative that we give now that it's very much a long story, but we'll condense it for you. So we also touch on our involvement with the regions, and predominantly within the HQ and also within the training and development. So just if I'll kick off about myself, really, to be fair. I sort of have a passion for learning, really sort of started very much at an early stage. So I'm a bit of a disaster. I came out of school with virtually no O levels, and I had to go back to college to get some more. I was lucky enough really in sort of mid-80s to join a local authority, and they sponsored me through very much as what you would now call an apprenticeship scheme in more in the business and finance side. But part of that apprenticeship scheme sort of allowed me to work with their tech services, and I was fortunate enough to see the light. And I went back to college to study for an ONC in what was building services engineering at Garrett's Green in South Birmingham College. So I've moved through various employers, right through HNC. I joined CIBSE in '86 as a licentiate member, and it was very much to get my foot in the door and just so that I could see where that was going to go. I've sort of joined a small consultancy partway through my career who were really sort of passionate about training and supporting their younger engineers. And as a result of that I had the opportunity to go across the Bath to do a diploma, and also to do a part-time degree, which was down at the University of Hertfordshire. And it was during that time that I actually transferred from a licentiate to an associate member of CIBSE. I graduated uni in '93 and became a full member of CIBSE in '95, and I got my chartership in May '96. That was the same year that I actually also went and joined ASHRAE, and I know that's the opposition, but they did have some good technical stuff at the time. Again, lucky enough to work with a number of really good companies, and one of them sponsored me when I was a senior manager to go back and do my MBA. So I actually went into Aston and did the business studies there on a day release basis. But let's be fair, that took me away from hands-on engineering. For my sins, I've also registered and trained as a low carbon consultant, and I've really used that as an opportunity to promote the low carbon within the industry in a senior position. I've always worked within the Midlands and mainly in the consulting industry. I've also worked both sides of the fence. I've done some work with contractors, learning, as Mike will tell you, how bad sometimes consultants can actually be, looking at particularly the maintenance and servicing of equipment. But this passion for the training and development really sort of stuck with me from the early employers that have given me that opportunity. And every chance I've had, really, I've promoted that within various companies, and I've encouraged the younger engineers that have been with me to go on and to better themselves, really. I've also, a couple of the employers that I work with, particularly in the late 90s, we were involved early doors with schools, particularly the secondary schools and the junior schools. You know, we've been out there in the early days really with the engineering council promoting things. And again, a really freak opportunity in some respects. The very early days of the Technician Apprenticeship Consortia, when they were setting up the Trailblazers, which is the forerunner to what we now call the modern apprenticeship. I was briefly involved with the leadership there of that. When CIBSE reached out for training and development panel members in round about 2012, I put my name forward, and in 2017 I was offered the opportunity to take the chair within that panel, which I currently hold today. I actually became a fellow of CIBSE in 2014, some 28 years after we started in the industry. So been a long road, you know, and the opportunity to become a fellow was quite an interesting one. I was quite pleased when I was asked to do that. Now I've recently extended my CIBSE activities as well. I now interview as well for all grades of membership and also for Engineering Council registration. Although I've done very little with the regions, I have helped Joss out with from time to time with a few activities, and for the last 4 years I've also been working with the Young Engineers Network on the judging panel. And for those of you that are keen to look at that, our awards evening is next Tuesday. Been a long journey from 81 when I left school to my fellowship in 2014. There's no doubt I've met some interesting characters along the way, some good and some challenging companies. Step-by-step progression really for me, but the training and development really has remained core, and it's very much around that wanting to give back and to support those who are in our industry and that really are our future within the industry. And I'm a really strong learner in the training and development and the earn and learn. So I'm going to come back to training and development in a second, where we're going to talk specifically about the panel and the panel's activities. So I'll pass over to Mike.
Hi there. So my story's not, in fact, it was incredibly similar to what Simon just described. I too left school with virtually, well, I had some decent CSEs, but I had no interest in learning whatsoever. Didn't particularly ever see myself in any sort of higher education, and left school at 16 in 1987. And to be quite honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And at the time, my sister was a wages clerk at CIBSE and said to me, "I'll get you an apprenticeship as an electrician. Don't let me down or I'll kill you." And that's how I started in this industry. I went to Gavetts Green, did my qualified through the old 236 part 1 and 2 as an electrician, did my C certificate, and then was lucky enough that at Southers they asked me to go into the office and work in the design and estimating department. So in about 89, 90, I went into the office at Southers, CIBSE in Birmingham, were contractors, and having done my Sitting Guilds C certificate, they put me on my 1-year ONC bridging course. So at that point, about 1990s, when I joined CIBSE as a student member, I then stayed there, did my HNC at Matthew Bolton, and met some really interesting people who work for consultants rather than contractors, which was my background, and decided during my HNC that actually I was going to finish my HNC and I was going to go to university full time because I wanted to become a chartered engineer. So I quit work in 1993, left contracting and went to university full time at University of Northumbria, the old Newcastle Poly. It was a 4-year course with a sandwich year. I did a sandwich year in London. I graduated, worked in London for a couple of years, came back to Birmingham, went to work for Hayden Young, great company as they were then. They're now, well, they became Balfour Kilpatrick, part of Balfour Beatty. Great company, but during my 2 years there, I realised that contracting, working as a designer at contractors wasn't for me. So I went back to consulting. Spent a brief period at Couch Perry and Wilkes 4 or 5 years, and then I've been where I am at the moment at Atlantic sort of 17 years. And during that time, I got my CEng in 2003, and then, like Simon, in the same year as Simon, actually in 2012, I was asked to join the CIBSE Training and Development Panel, which we'll talk about later. And that was on the back of me in 2010 picking up my business's approved training and development scheme. And I'd been a mentor on that scheme with trainees since 2005. As a result of being on the T&D panel, managed to get a lot more involved in mentoring, which is sort of my real passion, and got a lot more involved with the Institute at sort of HQ. Like Simon, I've not been overly involved in the region. We've supported the region where we can, but I tend to be involved more with HQ. So I was a fellow in 2015, and I have to say to anyone that's thinking about going fellow, it's not a particularly difficult thing to get. I mean, it's not necessarily easy to get, but it's not a lot of work to get. If you've got the experience, it's a pretty easy route. And I found that there was a lot of support for me from HQ. As a result of being involved with the T&D, as I said, that I've managed to get involved in a lot of other things, other avenues away from traditional engineering. And as I mentioned, mentoring is a real passion of mine. So I am a level 5 business coach and mentor with the Chartered Management Institute. I'm currently waiting to hear on my application as Chartered Manager. I mentored at Brunel for their Brunel University on their Women in Engineering programme. I've been doing that for 7 years now. And I mentor for various other groups, shall we say. I did a year for Prince's Trust. I've done a year with the West Midlands Mayor with the Mayor's Mentor Schemes. And again, like Simon, I've been involved all the way through since Trailblazers with the committee that's been responsible for preparing the apprenticeship standards that are out. And the latest string to my bow is I am now CIBSE's I'm a CIBSE trainer for CIBSE's mentoring scheme that they run. So if you need any mentoring training, contact CIBSE Training. Sorry, I'll get that pitch in there. And that's me in a nutshell. So I suppose when we talk about training and development schemes, the important thing is to understand that the crux of it all is about IPD. And I'm hoping most people are aware of IPDs. We're all familiar with CPD, continuing professional development, but IPD is our initial professional development. And that's the bit we do where we work towards traditionally the 3 grades of Eng Tech, iEng and CEng. And that's that journey that our graduates, trainees or apprentices go on to get to that initial target that they're going for in terms of their UK spec qualification, which obviously is coupled in with LCIBS, ACIBS and MCIBS. In order to get there, people do need help, and there are lots of resources available. You know, the help that is available are mentors, be they active mentors that are appointed via a training and development scheme, or be they someone's mentor that they've just developed a relationship with for several years of coming through the industry. The institute itself, CIBSE, there's an absolute raft of information on CIBSE's website to help people on that journey. There's sample forms, lots of sample reports on there that have been completed by people. And one of the biggest forms of help out there is to be on a training and development program. And I suppose the last question is how important is IPD? We were having a discussion before those of you on this call came in about how a number of sessions have been run recently about people's route to chartered engineer and how there wasn't an awful lot of people attended them. And I hope that isn't a sign that people don't see the qualifications as important. I think for me, being a chartered engineer is my greatest achievement. I don't put too much emphasis on my degree. For me, that was a route to me to get chartered. So I see that IPD route to Eng Tech, iEng or CEng as really, really important. There is a big emphasis on it. So when you look at apprenticeship standards, there is a requirement to finish an apprenticeship to reach either your Eng Tech for level 3 or your iEng if you're going level 5. There is an absolute requirement for that. And, you know, for me, as I say, the self-reward is important, that fact of self-recognition. It can be tough. It can be tough to do. I think from my point of view, having gone through that route without being on a T&D scheme, I think the hardest thing I found was getting, 6 years after graduating, 5 or 6 years, and having to put that effort in to sit and write a report from scratch. So my advice to anyone would be get that help early so that you can prepare that information in plenty of time. Simon? So before we drop on, so the next thing is, what is training and development? So training and development, I suppose in an HR sense, is any training and any development, but in the scheme of what we're discussing today, T&D is focusing really on a means to get to that point of application for those qualifications. So it's the way you go on that journey. And the reason T&D is important to that route of getting that IPD done is that it provides structure. It doesn't just let someone go on their merry way, and then as I did 5 or 6 years later, come along and try and write a report. It provides structure. It provides regular reporting. It provides a means for someone to ensure that they've got the support of, call it a mentor, call it a buddy, someone that's been down that journey themselves. It makes sure they're consistent throughout, and for the company, it gives the company a means to track their progress and make sure that they're actually progressing and they're actually getting to where they need to be in a timely fashion. I mean, it is vitally important to grads and trainees, but it is absolutely essential and an implicit part of apprenticeships. And with apprenticeships, that will normally be externally controlled as well by the apprenticeship assessor or the university on a university degree. The other key benefit to T&D is that it provides a bond between those people that are coming through and the more senior people in the business, and it allows the more senior people in the business to understand the skill set that those graduates, trainees, apprentices have. It allows you to understand the skill sets they've got going forward and what gaps they've got, what strengths they've got, what weaknesses they've got, and what needs to be worked on to help develop them towards completing their T&D goal, but also towards helping them become a better engineer in the shorter term for a business. Simon, next slide.
So really, the question is, what is the training and development panel, and who are we and what do we do really? And as Mike's alluded to, we both joined the panel around about the same time. At the moment, the panel comprises of 8 principal members, and we're all voluntary. We meet 3 times a year. We're trying to meet face to face once down in Balham, but generally we meet virtually. We're made up really of many of the leading companies within the industry, and the people on the panel change on a reasonably regular basis, but obviously because it's voluntary, people tend to stay for a period. We have 2 new members joining us later this year, following really an appeal that we did with Mitesh, who's our coordinator at CIBSE, to try and bolster the team a little bit. We also have a number of regional reviewers, and some of those eventually become panel members, but the idea is to help us out in the field, because clearly we have schemes now running from Scotland right the way down onto the coast and abroad, and it's not possible to be everywhere. It's also worth noting really that all professional approved schemes follow the same Engineering Council format for compliance. So when anybody says to you, we have a training scheme, whether it's civil engineers or structural, or whether it's electrical or chemistry or physics, it doesn't really make much difference. We all follow the same broad principle of the format, which is the 5 main groups within the Engineering Council's format. And the panel's real purpose is to provide support for new schemes. We give advice, we give direction, we show you how to comply with the Engineering Council requirements. But what we don't do is we don't write a scheme for you, nor will we set out what is and isn't the core elements of that scheme. We will review a scheme that somebody brings to us and how that is implemented. We also do reviews, annual reviews, you know, the company statistics, who's on the scheme, who's graduated, who's moved on. We look at the scheme operation. We look at the candidate learning particularly. We're interested in understanding how a candidate is moving through the scheme. We accredit schemes for single offices, multiple offices, you know, different countries. It's generally speaking for a 3-year period. But what we ask for is evidence that that scheme is running within that office. So if you have an office in, say, the Midlands, and you get accredited, and then you open an office in Scotland, once you've got it up and running in Scotland and you have the evidence, you can apply to the panel, and we will extend that scheme provided you have the evidence to do that. At the moment, we reaccredit schemes generally on a virtual basis, but new ones we tend to do face-to-face within the office where we can, and we also accredit with other institutes. So we don't necessarily do things in isolation. I've said we follow the same format. So there's a well-known secure company down in Reading, and we've been in there with the Institute of Physics, the Institute of Chemistry, the Institute of Electrical Engineers. We've all been together in one forum, and we've gone through everybody's training scheme all at the same time, and that does work. Currently, there are 23 companies that have got approved schemes that are recognised by CIBSE. 4 have lapsed and are due for reaccreditation this year, so that'll give us the 27. And we've got about 5 new ones currently seeking registration. So I suppose the question is, well, why have one? What's the benefit to your company, really? Some of you are small organisations, some of you are larger, but principally I would say this to you, and Mike touched on it, it's having a structured format to help the trainees record and manage the learning. You know, how to record, show the evidence for the engineering report. It helps put that report together. It helps with the membership presentation. But more importantly, it shows the growth of that engineer as those over the period of time. It's not meant to replace a large organisation's, you know, internal training scheme. And many people have graduate schemes, and, you know, they do those sorts of things. But for smaller companies, you know, there's a significant benefit when you're out there trying to recruit. And many of us know how difficult that really is at the moment. I think it provides that career path of structure for a younger engineer when they're coming into these organisations, because they can see a route. They can see a route through the organisation, but they can also see a route, you know, potentially through membership and to whatever engineering council grade they wish to go for. You know, we talk a lot about chartered engineers. We talk a lot about, you know, full members, but you know, associate members, incorporated engineers, you know, they are the core of our institute, and we need more of those people in our industry. You know, it isn't just for graduates, and it is used for apprentices. Mike touched on the endpoint assessment there, and the mature and the modern apprenticeship route, and some of the Eng Tech is now a requirement of that. So there are lots of benefits really to an organisation, but it's there to complement you. It's not there for us to do anything else like that. From a company point of view, you know, why run the scheme really? Why would you invest all this time in it? It provides that structure for the engineers, which we've talked about. But as Mike's also mentioned, it provides a partner for a younger engineer. It gives them that experienced person to talk to, whether that's a life mentor, whether that's a technical mentor, whether it just helps them grow in the engineering stages through their development. You know, hopefully they go to full membership and chartered, but you know, there's no reason why you couldn't step off at any point along that route. You know, and the other thing as well is that people don't necessarily appreciate there are alternative routes to membership. You know, there's the mature candidate technical type route where there's the report. There's no reason why an accredited scheme can't be used in that same approach. It gives you as a company that sort of core resource point for where all the information can be retained. It gives you the management of that information, and I believe it also helps the communication and up and down the company. You know, senior people get to know more about what their younger engineers are doing, and vice versa. The younger engineers are feeding in the latest technical benefits and the latest ideas within the industry because they're learning it at college. The one thing the panel does, which it benefits really for companies and brings to that, is that we run a forum. Some of you may have been to that forum, some of your companies may be there. The idea of the forum is really for us to share best practice with the rest of the companies. We've done it in various different ways. It's been in person at Balham. More recently, obviously, it's been on virtual in the last couple of years. But we've done all sorts of forums. We've done everything from setting up schemes. We've given how we deliver the advice, how we support the development. More recently, obviously, we've been working on the webinars. We've done things around the UK spec changes. We've done mics and sessions on the mentoring and the benefits. And also, we've recently done one on the CIBSE platform for the My Career Path, which is quite useful if you want a structured way for people to record information and takes it away from all the internal company stuff. We can support you with annual audits, with reviews. But as I say, it doesn't replace that in-house HR system. If you have one, then clearly it's there to complement it. I think the other thing as well is really from a trainee's point of view, it helps them with their self-assessment reports, the SARs, and also with their objective achieved reports. So the idea is that we want to know what somebody learned from a particular activity. What did they benefit? What did they learn from it? And that helps really with the compliance for Engineering Council learning. We also obviously have an interface with the Engineering Council, UK spec. We've talked about that, but the UK spec is designed and broken down into the Eng Tech, iEng, CEng, and again, all of those can be segmented out. So really, for the individual, for a trainee, what's its benefit? We've talked about the structured approach. Larger companies tend to have organised graduate schemes, but they also have the manpower to deal with it. From an individual's point of view, it's the mentoring and the coaching, and it really also helps because one of the things that the scheme does is it tracks the learning gaps. So it allows you to manage the experience that's needed. You're going to have engineers that have got no exposure to, maybe scheduling, could be contract administration, might be a technical area. Somebody might have done very little pipe work, but a load of duct work and, lighting, etc. So the idea is it highlights those gaps, and we can use that, or you can use that to manage them to allow that to go forward. I've talked about the My Career Path, which is really there now for recording that learning and the gain, that knowledge gain, really. And I think it's a consistent format, and because it's consistent across all the companies and it's a consistent approach with the OARs and what have you, when you come to a membership application, if you followed that scheme and you followed those criteria, it's much easier to review and record that report. And therefore it tends to be, not always, but it tends to be simpler to put somebody's membership application through because it follows a nice, clear, distinct format. So wider benefits, it's wider benefits for all of us really, aren't they? Better trained engineers are better educated, not just in the pure technical matters of this world, but we're engineers. There are wider impacts, particularly the engineering in our society and the role that we play in it. And particularly at the moment, we're all talking about, the green and sustainable environment. So there's a lot that we can do as we move through that. So there we go. Has any of you got any questions or want to ask any questions? I know maybe some of you have already been into the forum. Phil.
Phil, do you want to? So Phil was asking that he understands the Building Safety Act requires demonstration of competence possibly in the form of professional qualification and registration with the Engineering Council. And that is true. I know there's a lot of, for those of you that hopefully everyone's aware, the Building Safety Act, there's a lot of debate at the moment about aspects of it and how it's going to be applied. But you're right, it does require from designers of buildings a demonstration of competence, and that, as far as everyone's aware, will be proved by qualifications, registration with the Engineering Council and up-to-date CPD, which obviously the Institute also tracks with its members.
Yeah, and I was party to a conversation with some of the people in CIBSE around this recently, and there is a very clear format coming from the Engineering Council that is going to be very specific to those that want to go for the compliance on those buildings. As Mike says, CPD is going to become key. It's going to be one of those things that is going to be clearly looked at, and that understanding. I
mean, the one thing I would say is remember as well that with CPD, whilst CPD is vitally important, if someone's on that IPD journey and they're part of a T&D scheme, then to a certain extent they're obtaining a lot of CPD by probably self-learning through a T&D scheme as well as via traditional lunchtime seminars. And a question that nobody's asked, but I very often get asked when I do the mentoring course, is whether there's a time benefit to people on T&D schemes. And there's no evidence to suggest there is or isn't, but my personal belief is that had I been on an approved T&D scheme many years ago when I did it, I'd have probably gone for my chartered engineer at least 12 months earlier, because I wouldn't have spent 18 months trying to remember everything from my report. So I think that whilst there's not actually necessarily a time benefit, I think the fact that all that evidence has been collated through the journey helps.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, and I was fortunate to have recorded most of mine, and you can see that within about 12 months of me completing my degree, my membership application was ready to go. I missed the window, which is why it took me 18 months, I think, from start to finish. Definitely worth doing. And I think from a company point of view, that not only is it that structure and it gives you that format for training and development, for learning, for lifelong learning, really. It's helping our industry to encourage people in, and I think it's fair to say we all train people and some of them will leave, but ideally what we want to be doing is giving them the opportunity and giving them all the benefits and the things that go with that learning for them actually not to want to leave, and that's the balance that we need to get to. But people will move from company to company and we'll never stop that, and it is an investment.
Yeah. Any more questions? No?
Very quiet out there today.
Thanks, Phil.
I'm actually doing my C-Eng at the moment. I've been on it for about 18 months, so it just shows there's no limit to age. Because when you two guys were doing your apprenticeships, I was actually working hard. I finished my apprenticeship back in 71. So I finally got very similar to yourselves, left school with no qualifications, good CS, the old CSE good CSE grades, but nothing special, and night school all the way through to the age of 21, and he taken me to the age of 67. So I got my members about 3 years ago, and now I'm going for my CIBSE. But being an independent company, it's quite hard not having the support. So I think the guys who are on the call who work for organisations, you should make the most of being in a big organisation to get that support. Because when you go further down your career path, you might run your own practice. It's not as easy.
No, and I would say, if this goes out anywhere wider to people, if there is anyone out there that is working towards C-Eng, I-Eng, and Eng Tech's probably less likely to do on their own, and they're working towards it alone like yourself with no support, I think reach out to membership at the institute. They will try and put you in touch with someone that might be able to be someone to lean on and to help out. So that would be a message I'd say, is reach out to membership. Yeah,
I do have a mentor, one of the senior people in the lift industry, Dr. Gina Barney. So it's I have got support in that way, but I'm just saying to the guys on the call that as their careers progress, it gets harder, because obviously the work demands are more. When they're younger, people will make allowances for them actually doing some study and experimentation, and you get more experience in the business. It's easy. I've done this just to me my CIBSE on the technical report route, which I found quite a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And to be fair, I'll just come to Ben, because Ben's put a question in the forum. But one of the things we have done is we've used where clients for us have not had that opportunity, we've actually brought them into our training scheme within our consultancy to allow them to have that structure, and to give them that support. But the training and development panel will support other companies. That's what we're there for. We're not there to just go rigidly down the route of company after company after company. So Ben's asked the question if this would be really good benefit, and how does he take the next step forward. The answer to that, Ben, would be contact CIBSE HQ, Mitesh or contact me. I don't mind that. You can contact me through the website, what have you, or through this link, and we will talk to you about how you do that. I mean, what you need to have is there are lots of guidance documents on the website. It's not exactly the easiest thing to find. So if you go onto the new CIBSE website and go into training, if I can get it up, I'll do it in a second. And you can go through into the training and development section, into the accreditation section, and in there's a lot of company standard documents that gives you the format for OARs, SARs, but it also gives you a membership document as well, a company document that you can use as a beginning of a portfolio. There's all sorts of things in there that you can help with. If you still want further information, it's not a problem. Pick up the phone. We can talk to you over the phone. If you want somebody to come out and have a chat with you, equally, people will do that. Mitesh at CIBSE HQ controls it for us at the moment. But as I say, you're more than happy to contact me as well. So I'll see if I can. So I have a couple. Here's one I prepared earlier. So if you go onto the CIBSE website itself, for those of you, hopefully you can see that under training, there is a section called accreditation and approvals, and under there's one called training and development schemes. We all agree this is not necessarily quite in the right place, so we're hoping to move this into the main folder in a moment. And if you click on that, it brings you through to here. So you have a section here on for employers, what to do for the training scheme, new and existing ones, and then the documents that might be of use to you. So in the documents, you have the training and development manual for companies, SARs, OARs, and then you have some information for the trainees as well. So hopefully that will give you a starting point. But as I say, it's not the easiest thing to find, and I do apologise, but it's in training, accreditation and approvals, training and development.
So when you make that application, Ben, it's possible to get, well, you can ask for an advisory visit, and normally that would be Mitesh and a member of the panel. So if you're Midlands, it'd probably be myself or Simon, to be honest, and we would come out and give some advice about what you need to do, and then you can sort of draft documentation, submit that, and that can get reviewed informally before you make formal application. We try and make it as helpful as possible. What we as a panel want is for as many companies as that want these schemes to have them in place.
And I think the other point I would make is that if you are, I don't know who you work with, Ben, but if you're a smaller organisation and you want some guidance and some help, we can put you in touch with another organisation that has a training scheme, and they can give you the learning from it, the things they did right and the things they did wrong. Thank you. Good question, sir.
Yeah.
I think somebody's typing, or Ben's typing.
I think Ben's typing another response.
Cheers, Ben.
Okay.
Okay, so I think if there's no more questions, that's on behalf of the CIBSE West Midlands. Thank you for your time, gentlemen, and the time of the attendees. It's been very interesting. And yeah, let's hope that some of the companies on the call take up the challenge of getting their own training and development plan, or department, well, not department, that'd be visual thinking, but actually get their own training and development scheme going. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.